up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the X-Transbots Virtus, FansToys Apache, and MMC Saltus, their versions of Masterpiece Springers. Now these figures came out a couple years apart. This one is from 2021. I think the original was 2020, and then the reissue, this is the alternative version, new paint colors, 2021. FansToys Apache 2017, and Virtus just came out in 2022. Now, as I mentioned in these comparisons, I always try to be as objective as possible. Of course, there's subjectivity involved in judging things like this. So if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collection and what would fit best for them. Now, with that being said, this comparison is going to be a little bit different because, number one, we're judging 3 at a time instead of 2. So 2 can actually get a point on a category, where if there's a 3-way tie, nobody gets a point. If there's a 2-way tie and the other one doesn't have a point, then you can get 2 points. So it is possible for 2 figures to score a point. Additionally, I also want to mention there's 2 alt modes here because they're triple changers. So we are going to look at 2 alt modes. There's going to be an extra category here for alt mode for the helicopter and alt mode for the vehicle. So with all that being said, let's get started, and we'll start off with accessories. So there are all the accessories these guys come with, and it's blatantly obvious that X-Transbots is going to win this category. But I do want to just go through each just to show you what they come with. So they all come with the sword, painted green handle, silver blade. The MMC comes with a gray handle. The FansToys comes with an additional painted green, because there were some scenes in the cartoon where it was green, the helicopter blade, but there you go for that. We'll match that up with the staff here from MMC. You get the little trident from IDW, and then we'll pick off, I guess we'll pick off a gun here. So there we go. Then we've got, they each come with the gray gun. Now FansToys went with the kind of silver paint, whereas they went with a gunmetal, and then MMC went with just a gray plastic. And FD is out at this point, so what's left is MMC and FansToys. They both come with an alternate IDW style head. Actually, this is their IDW style head. Very different looking. I'm not really sure. I mean, this one is clearly missing these side pieces here, so I don't really know, but we're going to count those off. Then we're left with an additional sword here for MMC. We will match it off with these blast effects here, or at least a single blast effect. This is just gray plastic. They both come with the missile or the armament from the movie where he was trying to fire at the Decepticons. And we're left with one extra head for MMC, although it's really just an alternate face. The head is exactly the same as the stock. And then XCB comes with 5 different faces, so we'll count off 1 face. And what you're left with is the minifigure here, which looks really good, 4 extra faces, and another blast effect, and a flight stand. So X-Transbots easily going to win accessories. All right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these guys. And this is another one where X-Transbots just blew everybody out of the water. They do have the arm missiles here. MMC has it too, but FT doesn't. They also have the flight stand. They also have the spinning helicopter blade. They also have the little guy here, although it's not really gimmicks, more an accessory. But they definitely nailed it with the gimmicks. We're going to give it to X-Transbots. All right, next we'll look at the cartoon accuracy. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. And me personally, I think it's between X-Transbots and MMC. While I do like the overall heroic proportions of FansToys, I don't think it looks like the cartoon. It's the furthest away, especially in the leg areas with the wheels, the yellow bits, the green bits sticking out. The overall bulkiness of the arms, you know, how big they are, and the overall bulkiness of the shoulders here. It doesn't look like the cartoon. So we'll stick to these two. Now, between these two, X-Transbots really nailed the upper body, especially the head and the chest and the arm area. Although this is a little bit odd in shape, I think the colors are really, really close. Now coming to the bottom, the leg portion, MMC not only got the color closer, but also the shape, the overall width and kind of the bulk of the legs seems to look better, more accurate on, not look better, but looks more accurate on the MMC. Coming to their backs, and again, FT is kind of already eliminated here from the running, but it even further eliminates it with these yellow pieces and the green. Just the colors overall are kind of getting in the way of FansToys. So we'll just, again, talk just about MMC and X-Transbots. And when it comes to these two, I think the backpack on MMC definitely is more accurate, but what they did was they went with these smaller boosters, which look right in robot mode, but then when you get to the helicopter mode, you'll see these are way too small. They just don't look right. So X-Transbots went for the more accurate backpack that fits in helicopter mode, but doesn't, it's kind of big, right? It's a big backpack. It's long on his back. So they just kind of said, hey, let's get an accurate helicopter mode too. So kind of a sacrifice, but I think MMC gets the better back. So because MMC has some parts, especially the legs and the back, but X-Transbots, it's got the upper body and the head and the overall look, I'm going to give a tie between MMC and XTB, and FansToys is going to take the loss on this one. Next, we'll talk about the sculpt on these three. And again, I think FansToys is kind of out of the running just due to the bulkiness and kind of unfinished look of the legs, especially in the back, but even on the front with the wheels. So we'll take them out for just a second between MMC and X-Transbots. Both pretty darn clean from the front, pretty darn clean from the side. They both do have the little wing here for the back of the legs. The MMC one is kind of static, you can't bend it, whereas the X-Transbot, you can bend it, which allows for more accurate look of the vehicle modes. And then on the back, you can see pretty clean. I think MMC, although they have the little wings here, but the back of the legs here on X-Transbots is a little bit of stuff going on. But overall, between the X-Transbots and MMC, both really clean and nicely sculpted. I tend to prefer the sculpt of the legs on MMC, but X-Transbots did a clean job on their legs. So I'm going to give Sculpt a tie between X-Transbots and MMC. All right, next we'll talk about the paint on these figures. And in order to do that, I need to explain my criteria. So I have two pieces of criteria for paint. One is the amount of total paint applied to the figure and the quality of the paint. How well does it last? How well does it look? So starting off with MMC, we got painted face and side yellow pieces here. Painted chest, midsection is unpainted, crotch is unpainted. Coming to the arms, the entire arm, I believe, is unpainted. Yeah, unpainted all the way down. The thighs are painted die cast. The knees are painted with this black square here. The shins themselves, this gray plastic, is unpainted. But then the feet are die cast and they are painted in that gray. Coming to FansToys, you have a fully painted head, painted upper shoulders and bicep up to here, but then from here down it is plastic, including the hands. The chest is fully painted. The midsection is unpainted. There is a jewel here, but that is also unpainted. The crotch is fully painted, and then from the hip all the way down is unpainted, except for the toes, which are painted die cast. For X-Transbots, you've got a painted face and the yellow parts here, fully painted chest, fully painted abs, fully painted arms up to here, up to the elbow, and then this part is unpainted, the green here, and then the hands. The crotch is fully painted. The thighs are fully painted in that beige. The legs are fully painted in the gray, and you have the little green accent there, and then the feet are painted. So as far as amount of paint, X-Transbots is going to win relatively easily on this comparison. As far as quality of paint, I do have some paint chipping on X-Transbots here on the shoulders, right here. But I don't have any issues anywhere else, at least so far. Nothing seems to be chipping, so I think that was just a poor decision by X-Transbots to use die cast and then to put this paint without any primer on it, and the paint came off very easily. But Other than that, the rest of the paint seems to be standing up, especially if you transform it properly. It doesn't seem to be an issue in terms of the paint. So I'm going to give X-Transbots the win on paint. They have the most, and they only have one little issue here. These two are fine, but they don't have nearly as much paint. All right, next we'll talk about the build quality on these three. And I'm going to pretty much eliminate X-Transbots from the running in this one right away just because of the problems I have. And just to kind of recap what I mentioned in my review, the legs are kind of unstable, especially depending how you configure these. And by the way, somebody asked, hey, what if you fold out these wheels? Does that help with the stability? No, it doesn't, because one, you're adding a wheel to the mix, and two, these things are kind of flimsy, so it doesn't really help. So you really have to make a choice, either have this out or not. But even with those, you can see I have the crotch thrust to get him to be a little bit more stable. Otherwise, he leans forward or leans back, and so that's not great. I also had this pin fall out of the figure. I had to put it back myself. I have this issue here on the shoulder. Just the chest overall just doesn't want to sit. It kind of doesn't lock in. You can kind of push it, but it just doesn't really ever get in there properly. So we're going to eliminate X-Transbots. Really talk about FansToys, MMC. Both of these companies have a good long track record of nice build quality. FansToys on occasion does have build problems. This one is not really one of those. This is really solid. But the only thing I could come up with between these two figures that was an issue is having loose, these little bits here are a little bit loose, just a tad. I mean, you can put some kiki in there, but those tend to be a little bit loose. And then the ankles themselves are on pins, so you can't tighten them, so they do get loose over time. Again, you can use kiki, but the MMC is actually on a screw. So that's about the only thing I've found that's gotten loose on this guy over time, but you can't tighten that screw, and actually I did that just to see, and it did work. So I'm going to give build quality just by a very, very small hair, by a nose, to MMC. Next, we'll talk about the articulation on these figures. In order to do that, I'll go through the articulation probably as quickly as I can just to show you. So the head is on a rotating swivel. The neck itself moves. The head is on a rotating swivel, but the neck itself can go up and down. So you can get way down, way up, and then rotate all the way around, and a little bit of side to side due to that bending neck panel. The shoulders rotate all the way around. This is a friction joint. It is still tight so far. I don't know how it'll last, but it is nice and tight. Shoulders go up to there on this joint. You have a rotation at the bicep. Double jointed elbow gets you the full bend. You have a rotation at the wrist. Individually articulated fingers on 1, 2, 3 pins. And the thumb is on a ball joint and an additional pin. You have a waist swivel and an ab crunch. Goes up to there. It is ratcheted. You have hip skirts here that will move out of the way. The legs will go up to there, back to there, up to the side on a ratchet, rotation at the thigh. So this is actually a double jointed knee, but it's basically unusable because of the way they designed it. So I think they changed the design, but there's a spring-loaded piece here, and obviously you're meant to be able to articulate this again, but because it's tabbed into the side, you can't do it. So if you try to use it, you will break it. So don't do it. You have to take the leg apart, and then maybe you can do that. But it is single jointed, at least based on the design that I can tell, due to the change design. And then you have ankle tilt, both directions, and pivot back and forth. So there you go for X-Transbots. For FansToys, you have the head on a rotating swivel, so it rotates all the way around. The neck does go back and forth, so you can get pretty much the same up and down. Shoulders rotate all the way around on a friction joint. Out to the side on a ratchet. You have a rotation at the bicep. Single jointed elbow just doesn't get you all the way, gets you a little past 90, but not all the way, just due to the sculpt. Wrist rotation, individual articulated fingers at 1, 2 pins, and then the thumb is on a ball joint. And you can get that, or I guess a double ball peg, so you can get that rotated. Oh, sorry, ball peg and a pin. You have rotation at the waist, it is ratcheted. No ab crunch on this one. Yeah, rotation at the mid-thigh. It does break the sculpt a little bit. You can move the hip skirt out of the way. Leg goes up to there on a ratchet. Back to there, hindered by its own sculpt. Out to the side on friction. It is a heavy leg, so it doesn't necessarily hold it there. But you do have a double jointed knee on this one, so you can get the full bend out of that. You have ankle tilt, and it's actually kind of funny the way it works. It's toe and heel tilt, so you do get a full tilt out of it. It's just they're separate. and then you get back and forth. So you can get that posed however you like. And then moving on to MMC, the head is also on a rotating swivel, but the neck panel lifts up. So this one gets way down, way up, rotates around, and due to the neck panel, you can get it to the side. Rotation on friction all the way around. Out to the side on this joint, you get a little bit more up on that joint. A rotation at the bicep, double jointed elbow gets you the full bend. If you move this out of the way, you can get it all the way up, but it does get you the full move. Rotation at the wrist. Fingers are on 1, 2, 3 pins. And then the thumb and the lower fingers are all together on 1 pin. And then the thumb is on a ball joint and a pin. For the waist, you have a rotation and an ab crunch all the way down in there, just on friction. You have hip skirts that move out of the way, legs go up to there on a ratchet, back to there on the ratchet, out to the side on a soft ratchet. Rotation in the mid-thigh doesn't break the sculpt as much as the FansToys, but it does break the sculpt a little bit. Double jointed knee gets you the full bend. Ankle tilt, both directions. It has a pull-down feature, so you can kind of get it all the way down. The toe can tilt, the heel can tilt. You can get a lot of movement out of those. You just have to kind of pose it. So for articulation, just the most smooth and best working is going to be MMC. So we're going to give articulation over to MMC. All right, next we'll talk about the transformation engineering. And again, I am going to eliminate X-Transbots from the running here. It's not fun at all. You watch my video for the transformation on all 3 of these, but this one is probably the least favorite. My next least favorite is probably going to be FansToys, especially in the legs. There's a lot of funky bits. Really, MMC nailed the transformation. So much fun. I just flip it back and forth for fun, not even for videos, but just for fun. So I'm going to get transformation to MMC. When it comes to engineering, they all have little bits of engineering that I really appreciate. But as an overall bot, I'm going to give MMC engineering. I really love the design and how they made this, the simplicity of it. Now, getting to the alt modes, we haven't judged those yet, but it does take some sacrifices. They had some really cool engineering that's fun, but the sacrifice is not as accurate as an alt mode. Next, we'll take a look at the vehicle alt mode. And in this one, X-Transbots and FansToys are really the only ones competing. MMC is really kind of out of the running here because their vehicle doesn't look anything like the cartoon. I do like it, but it's just not close enough. Now, between FansToys and X-Transbots, you can see the colors on the FansToys front is a little bit different. It should be the lighter color, but you actually got the darker green. And then on the back, you've got a little bit of junk in the trunk right on that backpack. So I think the X-Transbots nailed it a little better. So we're going to give the vehicle alt mode over to X-Transbots. Next, we'll talk about the helicopter alt mode. And just like the previous one, it's really X-Transbots and FansToys which are in the running. MMC is not really going to compete here. They're just too far off, especially in the tail section. So X-Transbots definitely has a really good looking helicopter mode. I like it in hand. But when I compared to the cartoon image, I noticed a few things that FansToys had done right. One is the green tail section actually goes back a little bit further, whereas the X-Transbots, the whole tail section is that gray. They also have very large tail fins for the X-Transbots, whereas the FansToys is a little bit smaller and also a little bit further back. And then finally, we did get the green helicopter blade with FansToys to allow you to make it look more like the cartoon. So we're going to give the helicopter alt mode to FansToys. The final factor here is the cost. And there's going to be some debate here because this guy's price has been going up and down all over the place. I bought it at $180, I believe, originally at retail. The Virtus I bought at retail for $200, and then the Saltus was $150. So it doesn't really matter what the price you paid for these. Saltus is going to win at $150. So final thoughts on this comparison. You can see the score there, and MMC is going to win by 1 point. X-Transbots is going to be a close second, and then FansToys in a distant third in this comparison. And that's really interesting to me because I actually really like the FansToys figure. I really like the MMC figure, and I really dislike the X-Transbots. But what really matters here is what's important to you in your figure. They all do things well, but for me personally, the quality issues that we have with X-Transbots, some people, the amount of accessories, gimmicks, and the overall look of this and the paint can overcome that, right? Maybe they don't really mind. They're not going to be transforming it often. I transform my stuff all the time. But for people that aren't going to do that, this probably serves the purpose. By the way, I was able to fix the knee, the ratchet here. I had to take it apart. There was a piece of metal, I had to shave apart some metal, and I was able to get it. But being the most expensive figure here in this comparison at $200, that's not something you should have to do. I also have, other issues like the paint and little bits here and there that bug me. But if those things don't bother you and you really like what X-Transbots have to offer here, this might be the one for you. Me personally, I'm going to hold on to my MMC and my FansToys. You know me, I'm a FansToys guy. And these two can switch between an alt mode and a robot mode, and that's going to work for my display. But you really decide what's important to you in your collection. So that's it for this comparison. Hopefully it helped you make a decision which direction you want to go. I am not keeping all three of these. I'm probably going to keep one or two. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.